All right. I'm here with Aaron Spivak, and he is the founder of the Founders Club. How's it going, Aaron?
It's going good, really good.
Nice. Very nice. So, before we get into the successes that you've had, let's talk about your background. What got you into business?
Oh, I was that typical lemonade stand, window cleaner. I was always doing business. I never thought of it that way, but I always had a ton of fun creating things and selling and transacting and watching, as a kid watching someone take a sip of my lemonade and say, oh, that's good. It's like, yeah, I made my own recipe, and so I was always into business. But I would say my first real business, and real is like one that I went to the bank, I got a bank account, paid taxes on, and it was when I was 18 when I started a cold pressed juice shop out of my mom's basement called Revitasize, and that was on the back of really feeling the need to provide for myself, provide for my family. My family was going through some hardships, and as an 18-year-old, I kind of felt the responsibility to like, wow, I got to stop messing around here. I got to start build something, and that's when business became kind of my journey, my path.
Nice. I like that. Like out of necessity, you
Mm-hmm.
really learn on the job and learn as you go. So what happened after that? You operate that from 18 to
Yeah, so like for a full year, this is back in 2012, and the healthy, I played hockey for 25 years, and the healthiest thing after a hockey game was a Subway sub. Now we all know Subway subs aren't so healthy now, but it was like McDonald's or Subway, and I kind of hacked my way through hockey through nutrition, and other people started to pick up on that, but there was nothing healthy out there, so I would literally juice like organic fruits and vegetables. Now it's like you go to Whole Foods, you can get juices anywhere. Back then, it was just like Tropicana or concentrate. So I would juice literally in my mother's basement. And most people, when you go to their house, they have a little stool there at the front door. You take your shoes off. At my house, we had a cash register. People would knock on the door, and I would literally have a mini fridge, and I would sell juices out of the fridge for a year, saving up at the time $50,000. It was a lot of money, and I wanted to open up my own store. I ended up undershooting that significantly. The store ended up costing me three times that. I had to like pull tricks, ask people for friends for money. It was a disaster. When I was 19, I opened up my first juice shop called Revitasize. It still exists today. It's 10 locations all across Toronto. But that was like my first endeavor as an 18-year-old, like, risking it all to open up what I thought people needed, which was the opportunity to get something healthy, but also quick. And now, we have a crazy menu from smoothies and food and wraps and acai bowls, and soups, everything made in house. But that all came from the idea of like, why can't I get something healthy outside of my house?
Mhm. I like that it was at such a critical young age there too, like the belief in yourself, the taking the jump and going at it, regardless of if it was, three times what you projected or five times what you projected. I think that that's such a like crucial learning point at that young age, which is
Mm.
so cool that you got that. A lot of people don't get that even ever, but sometimes they just get it later on when they realize like, okay, yeah, I do just need to go all in on this concept. And I like that it still exists today. That's crazy. Who is running it? Did you like hire a CEO or a general manager? How does that work?
Yeah, so my brother actually runs it, and he does a fantastic job at it. We've hired obviously a big team. We have a commissary, we have franchisees, and
Cool.
it's quite the organization now. 11 years later,
Nice.
but yeah, it we started it with no money, and our first store, I still have the blow up mattress in the back and the toothbrush in the washroom. We'd run 20-hour shifts. We'd juice at night, run the cash register during the day. And a lot of people are like, where'd you get your experience from at 18? I was a dropout. I've never worked at a restaurant. I had no idea what I was doing. We opened up no cash register. I forgot that you need a credit card machine. We had no change in the till. People would come in, they'd have a 20, they'd buy a juice. I'd be like, you got to take something else because I got no change for you. And it was kind of like a weird sales tactic. It worked out that way. But, uh, it's one of those things as an entrepreneur. Again, looking back, it's easy to say this. At the time, I didn't know any better. But looking back, it was like, if I sat there and thought about everything, I probably never would have started because I didn't have any recipe for success. I had no experience, no formal education, no money, but I had an idea and the drive and the willingness to risk it all in a way, but also see things through. Because to sit here and say we were perfect would be a crazy lie, but to sit here to say that we were relentless and we were a great horse to bet on because we were like I was impossible to beat because it was, in my opinion, life or death. Like my family didn't like we had to pay the mortgage. This wasn't an option. So that's we persevered, and now 10 years later, it's a nice business. But to get to that point was not easy.
Yeah. So how soon after did you start Hush? Like, what was that transition?
Yeah. So at 22, so 4 years in, I'm at a bar. A friend of mine's performing, and I had a buddy. I didn't have a lot of friends. All my friends are at university. I dropped out. I didn't. I was just working all day. And I had a friend come up to me and say, you're pretty weird. You're like a weird guy. We're all partying at university. You're like blending smoothies every day. I have another friend who's pretty weird, and he's right there at the bar. You guys should go meet. And I was like, okay, weird, but I'll do it. And I meet this guy, and we're chatting. And right away, he's a dropout. I'm a dropout. We have a lot of connection. And I realize, he's like, oh, I just launched my company. It's very successful. I'm traveling all over the world. And I'm like, how many employees do you have? He's like, I have one. I'm like, cool. I have 60, from our commissary, each location. At the time, we had already 7 locations. And he was mind blown. He's like, wow, how much money do you make? And, at the time, I was like, I make $10,000 a month, and I was like the cockiest guy in the world. And his eyes like open. He's like, oh my God, that's horrible. I was like, what do you mean horrible? It's amazing. It's a dream. And he's like, have you heard of the internet? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, the internet. He's like, how do you make more money? I'm like, well, I have to save up all the profit for the year, and then I take it and I risk it on another location. And if it goes well, I have to wait another year and do it again and again and again. And he's like, that is so stupid. You can just sell all your products online to everybody. I was like, no way. People do that. And it was a light bulb moment. We became friends. He ended up helping me launch the Provida online store. Within 6 months, my online store ended up being not only more profitable, but it would beat all the stores in revenue. And it had one employee literally doing the deliveries. It facilitated greater margins for the store. It helped us fund advertising, which then actually drove in-store traffic. And he was like a genius. He changed my business. And I remember saying to him, I'm going to do business with you one day. And 6 months later, I bring him grinded up crickets. And I say, we're going to sell alternative protein. And he goes, there's 60,000 searches a month for alternative protein. I'm like, that sounds great. And he goes, there's 300,000 searches for weighted blankets, and no one's doing it yet. And it was a light bulb moment for us. We spent the next 6 months, or I spent, because I was the product guy, I spent 6 months developing what I thought was the world's best weighted blanket at the time. Then January 2018, we launched on day one. We made 1 sale, 3 sales. And next thing you know, we're doing 30, 60, 100K months with 1 sample product. We weren't even delivering for 6 months yet. It was all pre-order based. And we made a deal. We said, you got your software company. I got my juice business. How are we going to do this? And we committed to meeting up every day at 5:30 p.m. and working from 6 p.m. until midnight every single day for a year. And then I would open the store at 6 a.m. And that was my life, 6 days a week for pretty much the first 18 months of Hush.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So I love that it started with 2 weird guys meeting. I think it's such a great nod to the sort of outcast mentality that you get when you're first kind of starting out and you realize that you are an entrepreneur. You don't really fit in most traditional senses in school. And I think a lot of it is just getting comfortable with that over time. And it's cool that you meet, somebody that your friend said was weird, and it just so happens he was also an entrepreneur. And I think there's a great lesson in there, in that 2 sort of people that didn't really fit the traditional mold end up doing this successful venture. So how did it initially scale? What were you guys tracking? Because that's a pretty rapid clip that you guys were going at. Was it return on ad spend? Was it retention on buying multiple blankets? What did that look like?
The truth is, it was math. So, and I'll get into it. So, now as a pretty active investor, and I guess we'll get into how I got to that point. But I would say the biggest difference between us and all of our competitors, and there was a time where we had 70,000 active competitors, and for us, a competitor was selling a weighted blanket on the internet. Some were good, some were not good, doesn't matter. They were actively selling. And the difference between us, we were the number one selling weighted blanket in the world in 16 countries, and everyone else was, I truly believe, yes, we had superior product, but we all know it's difficult to show that online with photos. Possible, but difficult. We had a superior brand, also possible, but difficult. But I think I knew my numbers better than anyone else. And what I mean by that is no one understood, at least now I see when I talk to marketers now, they understand it more. But back then, words like MER, understanding cash conversion cycle, understanding when I could push and pull my advertising was the difference. So back when we started, the average CPA for a weighted blanket on the internet was about $40. The average price for a weighted blanket back then was about $129 for a full-size weighted blanket. So, which is pretty healthy. Like, that's kind of what you want. You want to spend 40, it kind of makes sense, 30% cost to advertise. That was kind of where it started. Problem was, when you have 70,000 people actively selling on all the marketplaces and every single hole of the internet, that cost goes up extremely quick. And in the beginning, it was $40 CPAs. 6 to 7 months in, we were already approaching $99 CPAs. The average price of $120. You can do the math. No one was profitable anymore. So we had to make some critical decisions. And I see this in pretty much every portfolio company that I deal with and that I work with or that I advise with, or within the founder community, which I'm sure we'll get into, is we made a critical decision to not only increase our price, but to develop a product that justified it. So 6 months into our business, or 7 months in, July hits. So we started in January, about July hits. We go from 30 to 40 sales a day, pretty much the whole year until that point. We thought we were rich, to 1 to 2 sales, most days 0. It was like a panic button. We're like, oh my God, this business is over, right? All these competitors, no one's buying. And I make a last ditch effort. And I recommend anyone listening to this to immediately do this. I don't care how big your business is. I advise $250 million a year e-com brands. I make them do this. This is super, super important. We had 2,000 customers at the time to that point. And instead of packing it in, which we were this close to doing, we were this close to just saying, let's sell the remaining inventory, fire sale it, and move on. I said, why don't we call every single one of our customers and ask them why they're not buying or why they're not buying again? Abandoned carts, previous customers, like what is going on? Because no one is buying. We call them and every single person says the same thing. They go, Aaron, we love the blanket. It washes well. You guys figured it out. You figured out how to cover my bed. It's a beautiful design. I'm like, great. Why aren't you buying it right now? And they said, well, it's too hot. We're sweating. It's way too hot. It's 80, 90 degrees outside. It's the middle of the summer. It's too hot. I'm putting it in the closet and I'll bring it back out in the winter. Then I went to go look at all my competitors and all their 1-stars. And every single one of their 1-star, it's too hot. It's too hot. The market was producing weighted blankets that were just too hot. So we made a pivotal decision to go and innovate in the space because we knew that if we can make a weighted blanket that wasn't too hot, we would not only satisfy our customers, we would satisfy all the demand for pretty much 4 months of the year. Because otherwise we just had a seasonal business. So at the end of our first year, again, we did about 600, just shy of $700,000 in sales in our first year. We take to develop the world's first cooling weighted blanket. Now, we had to buy hundreds of thousands of yards. We developed our own fabric, so we didn't have the money to do so. We went to Kickstarter. We launched that in March of 2019, so essentially our second year of business. We did $1.5 million in 30 days. It was top 10, so I think it still is actually a top 10 Canadian campaign of all time. We had close to 10,000 backers from 14 countries. We ended up going on Canadian version of Shark Tank, Dragon's Den. We took over the space. The business went from a $600,000-$700,000 a year business to a $10 million a year business, essentially overnight. Our CPAs went from $99 back to $19. And the reason why I started with the math was because not only did I do that, was I also took our price and went from $129 to $349. So the market at that point was already under 100. Like if you go to Target now, you'll find a weighted blanket for $49. The market was going down because everyone was selling the same product and they had to drop the price in order to maintain the demand. We went up with innovation. So our brand elevated, our price elevated, our margin elevated, and our product elevated. So now I can spend $149 to acquire a customer. So I was the number one on Google in every country we were shipping in. I was also the number two Google because I would own the review site. And I was the most reviewed on Amazon at our price point. So I owned the number one spot everywhere. So people say, how do you know you're the number one weighted blanket? It's because I am literally in the number one weighted blanket. You couldn't go anywhere else for a weighted blanket. And the market kept getting worse and worse for the category, but better and better for me. And our market share continued to go up, and it actually created the vehicle for us to go and launch other products because we had the big B word, which was brand. Mm-hmm. Because we had brand, we were able to innovate. You know, the company now sells more in sheets, in mattresses, in toppers, in duvets, and it doesn't weighted blankets. All of my weighted blanket competitors are dead because they didn't build the brand. They just built the blanket. So for us, again, the math enabled us. You know, we sponsored NHL teams. We bought billboards. We took over the whole city of Toronto. We had retail stores. Why were we able to do it? Because we had the margin, had the money to do so. You need the money to do. We started the company with $4,000 from DJ money from the weekend. We didn't raise any money, but we had the math. And when you have the math, you can play chess on both sides. You can play against yourself. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's always like, the brand story, the product, cool. Can we make the math work? Because if you don't have the money, it doesn't matter. You can be sitting on a gold mine. You're not going to be able to get it out there into the world.
I love that. Love that. Going premium with the innovation and increasing that margin. That's great. Love that story. So let's talk about the exit. Let's talk about how the conversation started. Did you get approached? Mm-hmm. Did you go to a banker? How did it work?
Yeah. So just like no to a banker. It was the bankers were chasing us. We were just making a lot of noise at the time. I mean, it's a personal thing. I don't think a banker is on your team because the incentives are never aligned. I mean, you can argue that when you get paid, they get paid, but their interest is just to get a deal done. And your interest is much more than just a deal. There's a lot of things involved. There's terms, there's product, there's liabilities, there's disclosures. There's, you know, do you even care about this brand? Do you want to see it out there into the world? For us, like Hush was our baby. And I'm so happy the way we structured the deal. I mean, it's a 9-figure brand now. It's crushing because of the way we did the deal. And like I've seen a lot of brands get handed off and they just die or whatever. And we didn't want to see it die. But yeah, no, I'm a big believer in manifesting. So we always knew who we would sell to on day one. We had their picture up on the wall. We knew the type of businesses they buyed or they like to buy. We knew who would buy it. We knew where they lived. You know, we put billboards up all around his house for years. We sponsored the NHL team in his hometown. We're very intentional with who we want to sell to. And I, you know, back to like, you know, when I advise or I invest, I always say, you know, so what's the plan? Like, you're going to sell this thing and keep it forever. And I find the most dangerous founder is one that goes, oh, you know, maybe I'll sell, maybe I'll keep it, maybe I don't know, like we'll see how it goes. It's a very dangerous mindset. Like you don't know where you want to be, you don't know how the story you want this story to end. Not saying things can't change, they could, but it's good to have some sort of direction, especially if you have a team and you want to bring that team with you. We were very clear who we would sell to at what point and for how much. And the part of it was manifesting, but a part of it was also being intentional with the way we were building our business. And we knew that they bought on EBITDA. So we were always protecting our EBITDA. Some people don't, right? Like I have a friend like Mike Fata, they sold Soul Cuisine for, I think it was like 400x EBITDA, but EBITDA was like a negative number, you know, and like they made over $100 million, you know? So like every industry is different. I knew in my industry, in DTC specifically, physical products, they buy on a multiple of EBITDA for the most part. And that you want that EBITDA number to be high. So we were intentional with that. And yeah, we went to a charity event. We met someone who eventually introduced us to the guy that ended up buying our business. And it was about a year-long process, getting to know them. It was very much a relationship. They're a publicly traded company. They're the largest sleep company in the country. Tremendous amount of due diligence. It was probably the most difficult year of my life because as a 26-year-old, 25 at the time, going through, a Canadian landmark acquisition at the time. I think it was like the third largest acquisition ever in the DTC space in the country. Is an extremely lonely process, very scary at times, because at any moment you think it's going to happen, then you think it's not going to happen. You second guess everything. And it instills a tremendous amount of doubt, fear, and insecurity. And looking back, I went through that alone, just my co-founder and I. It was a very lonely experience, which actually, sparked, I guess, what we'll talk about shortly, the pivot into creating a community. Because at 25, 26, I didn't know anyone that ever sold the business for like any real money. I didn't know an M&A lawyer. I found my M&A lawyer in a Google search, which is not a good thing. You don't want to do that. The people assume that entrepreneurs just know everyone. It's like, no, if you're an entrepreneur and you're a founder, you're probably working all day on your business. And we made a tremendous amount of mistakes simply because we didn't have access to the right people at the right time. I think in hindsight, we were fortunate that we actually sold to a publicly traded company because they were bound by a lot of rules. But I know a lot of friends that, gone the PE route and or to like aggregators, and it gets nasty. And you work so hard to build something. The last thing you want is to do a deal that doesn't make you feel good, because it's not easy to get. We were doing just under $50 million of sale in 40 years. At a double-digit point margin. Like, we built a really nice business with almost 1 million customers. The last thing we wanted to do is get squashed, because you spend so much time and effort building something. So looking back, it wasn't our fault. We just didn't have anyone, like literally, like my dad never sold a business, like my uncle. Like, I always joke with my friends. I say, how many people can you call right now that'll answer the phone that have sold their business for any, call it life-changing money? The answer is usually zero for most business owners. And one of my passions is to change that. One of my passions is to like, no, you should have people around you, like-minded individuals that could be there for you when you have life-defining events. Selling your company could be a life-defining event. It was for me, especially at 25, 26 years old, like crazy, really, if you look back in hindsight. So I'm very fortunate how things unfolded, but to answer your question, yeah, I mean, not as smooth. And I'm grateful we didn't use a banker, because I feel like it could have been way worse.
Got it. Well, that takes us to the finale. You kind of answered valuation there on EBITDA. You answered the timing question. I guess the finale is knowing what you know now. What would you tell Aaron 10 years ago?
I answer this kind of the same way all the time. And I'm trying to say, can I answer in a different way? I think the truth that I would say, and it probably applies to everyone listening, is that it'll all work out. I think as a founder, imposter syndrome, doubt, fear is in all of us. There's no way to avoid it. It comes up all the time. I get it now still, and I say that to people, and they're like, "What do you mean?" Like, I'm like, "Yeah, I get it all the time." And to remind yourself and to believe in the end of your story. And that's one thing that I would go back, and I always believed in my story, but I believed it in a delusional way, which you need that. I always say that best founders are the most delusional. And to go back, I would just say, keep being delusional. I had a tremendous amount of doubters. When I dropped out of school, it wasn't cool like it is today. Now kids drop out of school. It's like, what are you up to? What are you going to do? When I dropped out of school, it was like, you're going to have a hot dog stand or drug dealer. Like, those are the two options. There was no other option. We never heard of someone that dropped out of school and like did something. It was always like they built something, then dropped out of school. It was never like drop out of school and figure it out. So I had a lot of people that, with good intentions, didn't believe in what I believed in. And the loneliness is huge, and the fear and the doubt. And so to go back and say, hey, it's all going to work out, I think is the number one message, and probably the same message that I can give to anyone listening who is also ambitious, who also has a strong narrative in their head, who's also a little bit delusional, but is also willing to put in the work over a long period of time, which is a very important variable, 10 years doing anything. I think it's virtually impossible that you don't end up happier and on the other side of the mountain if you keep chipping away.
Mm-hmm. Well, that takes us to your current venture. I think it's a great segue there, because totally agree. lonely, and especially that year that you talked about. I've been there where you're just alone. You can't really talk to anybody about certain things because you don't want to rock the boat. It's very, very complex. So, the Founders Club, let's talk about that. Like the startup story, and effectively, you guys are really helping people through the journey with resources that you didn't have when you were going through it, which makes total sense. Uh, what was the kind of founding story around it? Did you get a co-founder? Did you kind of spark a Discord? How'd you start?
Yeah, I'll be clear. I think a lot of founder or a lot of like communities out there. There's lots of them. There's a ton of them are great. I'm a part of a handful of them. Typically, they're based around one person, right? It's like, have you joined like this community? It's by so and so. The Founders Club is not that. It's not about me. It's not about Chris, who's the founder of CrossNet, my co-founder. The Founders Club was based on the simple idea that I truly believe that founders are built to grow and evolve within communities, right? Like you are the sum of the people that you hang out with. We've all heard of that millions of times, but there's so many different ways to be a part of a community. And there's a lot of communities out there that have only adopted one. I've was a part of really big communities before, and like we only meet in person once a month, which is great. Sometimes there's a retreat that happens once a year and you go to that. Sometimes it's a mastermind. The Founders Club was built on the idea that every high growth founders, we've got some incredible brands. We service CPG founders, retailers, brands, SaaS, tech, AI, all within the community. We chat on like there's a virtual, call it a Slack group with multiple channels. People are talking pretty much all day. There's a monthly mastermind where you get grouped into a cohort of 6 to 8 people and you meet once a month for 2 hours with a business coach, and everyone kind of goes through it. It's very much community based, community support. It's very relationship based. And the reason why I say relationship is because my core belief is that a good relationship is one that has both equal parts giving and taking. And some people, when I got scared with the word resources, some people join and they just want to like take, which is awesome. But that's not the core of a good relationship. The core of a good relationship is our members are incredible and they have incredible stories and they have so much to give. So the community actually enables people to help people, to support each other, to share resources, to talk people through things, to talk people off a ledge sometimes, to get people excited and support them on their new products and their new vendors. Every year I do all my Christmas shopping within the club because there's so many incredible brands and products, and so does everyone, because you want to support the people that you know, just like you want to support your friends. And that's why it's a community. It's not Aaron giving a lecture every month. I don't do that. So that's the virtual component. We have 60 plus in-person events all over the country a year. So our members come together all the time in various different cities: Toronto, New York, Miami, Austin, LA. We just did our annual retreat, which is once a year in Tulum. 50 members flew out. We had a 4-day goal setting workshop. We had incredible speakers come and talk about whatever the pressing topics are. So every Wednesday we have we call it a community FC chat, which we have a private speaker come and talk about the pressing topics. Sometimes it's financial planning. Sometimes it's understanding your P&L. Sometimes it's what's working on TikTok and TikTok Shop and managing your MER and what's working for ads and creative or product sourcing, whatever, storage facilities. And the last thing is, because we are a big community, we're very powerful. And what I mean by that is, as a small and up-and-coming brand, or even as a more established brand, it's tough for you to gain leverage with a lot of these retailers, a lot of these SaaS apps, and all these different 3PLs or TV or whatever your ad buys or agencies. It's tough to gain leverage. So we have something called the FC Partners, which is the Founders Club Partners, which is a group of vetted partners, vetted agencies that we exclusively work with. And that way our members have access to the best of the best, and they don't have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year to get access to that, because we are a group. It's kind of like, I always joke with my family members. I say, they get the same banking that I get. And people are like, what does that mean? It's like, well, I get private banking, so I get all these free things all the time, right? And same with when I travel, I get all these free things. But because I put my whole family underneath my plan, they also get all these free things, and they don't have to spend stupid amounts on their credit card to get it. They get access to it. And it's kind of like our members have, exclusive access to a lot of these things. But my favorite part is just the opportunity for people to come together all the time, at people's houses, at restaurants, at venues, at events, movie nights, sometimes paddle, working out. There's so many different ways. And we have some incredible stories. In fact, one of our members was a full-time cop, and I'll tell it really quick. He 3D printed a cup in his basement that you can drink out of. It's also like temperature regulated, but you can like turn the knob and blow into the knob, and it sounds like a horn, like this loud horn. It's called Loud Cup. Look it up. And he came to one of our dinners with just this idea. This guy's a full-time police officer, so between 8 a.m. and like 5 p.m. he has no phone, and he's like, "Who can help me launch this?" And one of the members ended up saying, "I think I could." And fast forward, I think it's about 16 months, 12 to 18 months, let's call it. They're doing $30 million a year.
Whoa.
And because why? Why do they trust each other? Why do they meet? Is because we facilitated the community. It's highly vetted. So we have a very strong admissions process. People ask, what's the qualifications? I just say apply, because it's really about the people. Some people, it's very different for everybody. Always, always, always apply. foundersclubofficial.com, and then just go through the applications process. Even if you don't get accepted, it's so great to go through it because we'll still throw resources your way. And they're actually going to do double that this year. And he's still a cop. That's the best part of this whole story. He wants the pension. He's still a cop. He's still a cop. But the reason I bring it up is because that type of magic happens in communities. That type of magic happens when you and I both have a commonality. We're a part of something, which means I know you were vetted. You know I was vetted. I know you're cool. You know I'm cool. And cool is subjective, but cool means we're like-minded individuals. And that's where magic can happen. And magic happens all the time. And it really is. Sometimes I get to look back and say, like, when I was 21, 22, like the amount of agencies that screwed me, the amount of 3PLs that lost and shipped my stuff in the wrong ways, the amount of people that lied and cheated me. I didn't know any better, and none of us know better. Even now, Hush is, a 9-figure brand. The CEO does an incredible job. Even now, they need resources, they need help, they need good people, even hiring, firing, etc. So it really is a place for high growth entrepreneurs to have it all. And again, we're just starting. We're only about a year and a half in. We have 200 and change members, but it really does light me up. It's something I'm very passionate about.
Awesome. And you mentioned the URL there, but what was the URL that people can go to?
Yeah, foundersclubofficial.com. It's in my bio on Instagram, just at Spivak, at Spivak on Instagram. Or I love LinkedIn, so if you ever want to reach out, hit me up on LinkedIn. I post there all the time. But yeah, and I love connecting with founders. So if you are a founder listening to this, it's my favorite thing to do. At my house in Miami, if you're ever in Miami, hit me up. I get 20, 30, 40 founders at my house every Sunday. We do a little sauna, cold plunge, we hang out. I think founders are not only the coolest people in the world, but it's they keep the world moving. Small businesses run the world, so it's always cool to meet those people.
Right on. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the links that Aaron mentioned will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.